Now, your experiment today is called Beatniks.
Beatniks? Great! I love that stuff!
You have no clue what you're about to endure.
This time we watch Season 4, Episode 15, The Beatniks, with the short General Hospital 2.
You know, of all the movies that MST3K ever did about Beatniks, this is the one that doesn't have any Beatniks in it.
Oh no, but first, follow up? I understand there's some DVD instructions you're going to be telling us all about. I don't know what means. What does this mean?
Right. Well, this is about our previous episode, Godzilla versus Megalon.
Yes.
One of the little fun facts about that episode is that it was released on DVD once. And then Toho said no, and made them retract it.
How do you do that? If people buy a DVD, it's not like you can knock on everybody's door and be like, hey, I'm sorry, I need to take your DVD away from you?
Right, so they sent a replacement DVD out with a different episode on it, and they included instructions for how to properly dispose of your DVD with the episode of on it, which they kept muttering under their breath. I thought I sent you a link to this for you to watch.
Oh, you totally did.
Did you watch it?
I only watched part. No, did I watch it? I don't remember.
It's not that long.
Chris, it was like a Godzilla movie or 3 ago. I mean...
Well, so it's a fun little mini episode. It's fun to see everybody back in their old costumes. It's got Dr. Forrester, it's got Frank in it. And it is, of course, notable because it's the one time when Tom Servo's voice was done by TV's Frank.
That's pretty fantastic.
I'm a little surprised we didn't get emails about that, but we did get a note about something else about Godzilla versus Megalon. Listener Matt wrote and said, a thing I only realized recently, thanks in part to Big Action Bill's history videos, those are on YouTube, is that this particular Godzilla movie is unusually high profile in the U.S. because of a massive publicity blitz for a theatrical release here in 1976, 3 years after it flopped in Japan.
Oh.
It even got a primetime network airing with wacky host segments starring John Belushi wearing a Godzilla costume.
What? No!
I can only guess at the reason, but based on the posters, I think the distributor was trying to ride the coattails of Dino De Laurentiis' King Kong remake, and this was just the first kaiju movie he could get his hands on, so Godzilla vs. Megalon has an outsized influence on what Americans think a Godzilla movie is like. It explains a bunch of dim and confused childhood memories I had.
Oh my gosh. So you're telling me that John Belushi kind of did host segments for Godzilla versus Megalon? Do these exist on YouTube somewhere? Can I look these up?
No.
Oh, the internet never fails us for these sorts of things. Are you serious?
No, it's a famously non-existent piece of media.
Man, it's got to be on a tape somewhere, you know? Like somebody's got videotape recorded from a rebroadcast somewhere.
It would be nice. It would be nice if it existed, if people could find it. Everybody wants to see it.
Well, maybe his brother will reprise the role for us. Who knows?
Well, all right, but we've got a very special episode for it, and it's a pretty normal episode, actually.
Yeah,
but it's about the Beatniks, and it's got some General Hospital, so we should probably get to that.
That sounds fantastic. Let's go.
This time we watched Season 4, Episode 15, The Beatniks.
But first, a short, an episode in the continuing saga of General Hospital. This time, we see the beginning of Ken and Cynthia's engagement party. Jessie is so nice to be throwing this party for them, and she's brought out a nice cake, store-bought, Congratulations. Geez, this party wasn't even her idea. Cynthia cuts and dishes the cake and then gives Phil the first slice. Not that subtle there, Miss Cynthia. No wonder Phil is encouraged to be poopy to everyone. He won't give a toast. He keeps suggesting the impending marriage won't last, is embarrassed to hear how the engagement even happened. Ugh. Jessie takes Phil into the kitchen to get the coffee and subtly tell Phil to act better. But given he has no defense for his bad character, Phil is saved by the phone ringing. Dr. Ken is called away to take care of a patient, leaving Cynthia alone at the most depressing engagement party ever. Phil and Cynthia exchange meaningful glances, and that does not go unnoticed by Jessie. Tune in next time as the story never ends.
And now for our feature presentation. Eddie is the leader of a gang, a real proper 1950s gang. Along with Eddie, there's some other guy, a really weird guy named Mooney, and also Eddie's girlfriend, Iris. And the five of them drive around and rob a grocery store and then celebrate at the local diner. Iris tosses a coin into the jukebox and picks the karaoke version so Eddie can show off his singing. And wow, his bland rendition of a generic late 50s mid-tempo bop is just what the nation is hungry for. Or at least, that's what music business guy Harry Bayless thinks. Harry gets him a spot on a TV show and sends him off with his secretary Helen to buy some new clothes. And here's where our troubles began. His gang doesn't want to be left behind, especially Mooney. Mooney, he's hungry for fame, really aching for it, but he's even less talented than Eddie. Plus, he gets really weird about fame almost immediately. Meanwhile, Iris is immediately jealous that Eddie is hanging out with Helen. And fair enough, because Eddie and Helen fall in love almost immediately. And this basically is the whole movie. Eddie struggles between whether he should stick with his old friends or leave them behind and become a star. Harry puts Eddie up in a hotel room, and Eddie insists on bringing his gang along, but then the gang just trash the place, and then they all go out to a bar, and they're obnoxious there too, and things escalate, and Mooney ends up killing a guy. And that's when Mooney realizes that he can become famous through crime. And so a little while later, he ends up putting Harry Bayless in the hospital, and then he has to go on the lam. Eddie's doing great numbers with the audiences and really connecting with Helen. But Eddie decides to do the right thing and turn himself in. Mooney shows up, and Eddie and Mooney have a fight, which is no Godzilla vs. Megalon, and certainly no Godzilla vs. Megalon 2023. But what can you do? Anyway, eventually the cops arrive, and they take Eddie and Mooney off. And we never did get to meet any Beatniks. The end.
Meanwhile, on the Satellite of Love, welcome to Full Contact Rock, Paper, Scissors! Joel has instigated a particularly violent brand of the game, which seems patently unfair since Tom will always give paper and Crow will always give scissors for an answer. Therefore, Joel always wins, and winners give beatings. Well, GPC must be the ultimate winner because she handily takes out the vicious Joel to protect her little bots. Invention exchange time. The Mads have fashioned themselves into good luck troll dolls. What are the hallmarks of a troll doll? Well, the big hair, yes. The tummy with the outie belly button, yes. But especially the, well, butts. And with a subtle turnaround, Frank's troll bottom is exposed. It's perfect. Joel and the bots have made Pocket Pool, where an entire pool game can happen in your pants. Now, I know boys are especially fond of their snooker and balls, if you know what I mean, but this just sounds painful, especially when Joel says he's scratched. Yikes! At first movie break, Joel and the bots lament that while the movie is called The Beatniks, there don't seem to be any Beatniks in the actual movie. Carousel had more Beatniks. Pat Boone is more of a Beatnik than these not very hep cats. And this line of thinking descends into a, if you have this certain quality, you're not a Beatnik, a la the redneck comedy stylings of Jeff Foxworthy. Next break in the movie, and we are in Girl Slumber Party-O-Rama. Tom and GPC have their hair in curlers. Crow is in a shower cap, and they are talking boys, 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 especially that star singer Tony Travis. Meow. They each try to prove they know more about Tony than anyone else. But Joel comes in like a wet blanket to say his teen idols were better. But wait, he went to high school with a guy named Tony, and great guy, and his number's on speed dial. What girl sleepover would be complete without a phone call to the crush of your dreams? And this phone call does indeed crush their teen idol dreams. Next up, Joel and the bots chronicle the rise and fall of singing sensation Tom Servo through song and the headlines of a spinning variety paper. Robinson signs singing sensation. Servo signs contract. Servo to appear on Ed Sullivan. Servo signs big movie deal. Servo's career hits skids. Tom Servo, everything he touched he destroys. And that's dark, man. Real dark. To wrap up, we have a letter from Hawaii from a plucky kid who must write 1,000 times, "I will not call my mom a dickweed. P.S. Your mom's not punishing you because it's a swear word. Wise up and learn some manners." Crow is in full moon mode and is chasing GPC with a knife. Waylaid by Joel, Crow takes out Tom Servo, who has many last requests. In Scientist Land, Frank finds it hard to push the button with his plump little troll hands. But good luck trolls always find a way, and so does Frank. What do you think, sirs?
I didn't remember it from when I watched it originally, and I could not believe the pocket pool bit.
Oh my goodness. It was like, I'm going to stick a pole down my pants, and then I got a little like, woohoo, little hip jiggle, and I'm Stripes, everybody. Woo!
Oh, yeah, no, but you know what pocket pool is, right?
Pocket pool, pocket pool. No, what's pocket pool?
All right, so first off, pocket billiards is totally a normal game, but pocket pool is a term that I learned as a young person growing into teenage years and so forth for playing, as you said, with your snooker and balls, I think is how you refer to it, discreetly through your pocket.
Man, I think that as a non-boy, I just want to say it's never as discreet as you think it is.
No.
No, it never is.
There's nothing discreet about a 13-year-old, really.
Now that is the truest thing I believe we've ever said.
But no, it's not like it was more a thing I think that people talked about or accused others of than actually practiced. Though, your mileage may vary, listener.
As with all things.
I also realized that I just did not watch this episode very often. Like, I saw it back when it first aired, but it wasn't one that I turned to because I think I always was turning to the other Beatnik episodes, like the Rebel set or something.
Yeah, I have to say, last episode when we were talking about the Beatniks movie, I thought it was going to be something like the Rebel set that, I don't know, Chris, actually has Beatniks in it. It's a weird title for this movie.
Yeah. We also get the opening sketch, which is weirdly mean.
Yeah.
For this era of the show where Joel is just beating up on the bots.
It's true. He made Tom Servo have paper hands, right? He made Crow have scissor hands. He just created a whole situation where he could win all the time. It doesn't seem much like the Joel I know and love.
Well, we all have our days, I suppose, but...
It's true. This was a dark day. It was a pocket pool day.
Well, and it also was that very dark sketch about Tom's career with all the spinning newspapers.
Oh, my goodness. That was real dark, man.
I loved that sketch. That was kind of the highlight of the episode for me.
Oh, I don't know.
I mean, in addition to sort of the general dancing with darkness and so forth that I enjoyed about it, but the sheer length of time that Joel was willing to twirl the newspaper props so that everybody could get into position, like that commitment to the awkwardness of the bit not going very well intentionally, like it was great. I just love that.
That is a really good way to describe it. I love that they use the Batman music, right? When they have the swirling scene and it comes at you and then comes back. So the...
Exactly.
It's a shame that it is Tom's lack of, hands that work, which both makes Joel beat him inside of the opening segment in Rock, Paper, Scissors and keeps him from having the singing movie career of his dreams. I mean, when will it end, Chris?
It also keeps him from playing pocket pool.
Well, I mean, he also has no pockets, right?
I mean, you raise a good point, but I don't think the pockets are the bigger of the two problems. We should talk a little bit about the reason this movie even exists. The guy who directed it and wrote it and co-wrote all those songs, Paul Frees.
See, we just talked about Paul Frees when we did our Sword and the Dragon episode, and I would never have associated him with this particular movie.
Well, he's in it. He made a brief appearance or two.
He is in it, yes, but how would I recognize him? He's a voice actor.
Well, there you go. He did a little bit more than voice acting. In fact, here's the whole thing. He did so much that, listeners, in this short segment, we are not going to be able to talk about whatever your favorite Paul Frees moment is. Feel free to write in, but we can't cover all of them. So I'm sorry, because he did so much. Paul Frees, the man of 1,000 voices, the other man of 1,000 voices, the one who isn't Mel Blanc.
So what really struck you from his body of work?
Well, obviously, like the most famous thing he did is Boris Badenov, right, from Rocky and Bullwinkle.
I love that character.
It's a totally fun character.
Yes, very much so.
And is someone that I grew up with. But there's so many other things. He was also many of the characters in the Mr. Magoo Christmas special, which people who listen to our Christmas special know is quite dear to my heart.
Was he Mr. Magoo? He wasn't, right? Somebody else's.
No, Jim Backus is Mr. Magoo.
Oh, that's right. Oh my gosh.
He was Fezziwig and a few of the other minor characters.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, do you have a favorite Paul Frees performance?
My goodness. I can't say that there's a particular one that springs to mind, because what can compete with his writing and directing of the Boris Badenov, obviously.
Okay. Well, I thought, I think of you, and maybe I'm wrong in this, but I think of you as somebody who went to Disneyland a lot.
It's true.
So he narrates half the rides there, it feels like. Most notably the Haunted Mansion, but a bunch of other things as well.
Oh, does that mean that his voice is one of the ones that I would hear on my Haunted Mansion record that I would play on my parents' record player? When I was a kid, I could not go on the Haunted Mansion ride because it actually was too scary for me when I was little, but we would listen to the record anyway. I don't understand how that worked, but it totally worked, and the record is phenomenal. Not as good as the ride. Now that I'm adult, I can objectively say that, but it was a really good record. I totally wore that one through.
Hey there, Chris here in the editing booth and the fact-checking booth. Just to let you know that that's not Paul Frees on that record that Charlotte's remembering. The ghost host on that record is played by Peter Renaday, who is perhaps best known for doing a bunch of other Disney stuff, including Abraham Lincoln in the Hall of Presidents, and he also did the voice of Master Splinter in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, so that's pretty cool. Anyway, let's go back to talking about Paul Frees. He did several records. One of his early successes was working with Spike Jones, who I don't know if you ever listened to much Spike Jones, the musical comedian from the 50s, put out some very wacky stuff.
Wacky? Wacky with Paul Frees, huh?
Yeah, basically. Paul Frees became friends with Spike Jones' drummer, whose name was Eddie Brandt, and the two of them collaborated on putting out a bunch of songs together. One of the songs he put out in the 50s, in the early 50s, was a novelty song called The Skin Diver.
What?
A skin diver is like a snorkeler, somebody who swims like that.
Yeah.
And he goes under the sea and meets a mermaid and falls in love. And it's a perfectly fine novelty song, but the best part about it is that the chorus, Paul Frees sings while gargling.
That's so amazing.
It's really well done. It's really cute, I have to say.
Oh, is he as good as like Emily in the Batman when she's doing her riffing while she's doing stuff like this?
Yeah, so imagine you're doing that, but you're also singing, and it goes on for much longer.
Oh, wow. But it's effective or it's too much? What do you think?
It's effective. You can still make out what he's saying, and it perfectly fits the song, and it's very cute. And the song's only 2 minutes long, so who can complain? We'll have a link in the show notes. Totally worth knowing about.
Excellent.
The other thing that he became quite famous for with Spike Jones, I mean, there's a lot, but the other thing that people talk about a lot is a song called My Old Flame. One of Spike Jones's regular singers sings the first verse, and then Paul Frees comes in and sings it again, but in a Peter Lorre voice, where he goes more and more crazy to sing along about my old flame.
Wow, nothing says My Old Flame like creepy Igor voice. Wow.
Well, and then eventually there'd be some live shows that they did where Peter Lorre would join them.
Is this like having Michael McDonald wear the yacht rock hat and make everybody happy with that?
It's one of those things where I think that, I could be wrong about this, but my sense of it is that when you do a Peter Lorre impression, as you should, you're actually doing the Paul Frees doing Peter Lorre impression. It's one of those things where the impression gets so codified because somebody nails it like that.
Yes, I can totally see that. Oh my goodness, that's so much fun. It's so much fun.
He also put out a record a bit later in his career, in 1970. It was called Paul Frees and the Poster People, in which he sang a bunch of hit songs, most of which you'd recognize, hit songs from the 60s, but he sang all of them in different voices.
Oh.
So the first track and the single that was from it was that song, Mama Told Me Not to Come.
Yes.
W.C. Fields singing that.
Stop. I can't even imagine that. Thankfully, I don't have to. I could just go to the YouTube link in our show notes.
Absolutely. Edwin, I love to laugh long and loud and clear, singing Up, Up and Away in My Beautiful Balloon.
Excellent companions, yes.
If anybody goes and listens to it, and I recommend if this at all sounds appealing, you do, one of the tracks, unfortunately, is Let It Be, sung by Charlie Chan. Yeah.
Oh.
Paul Frees liked to do a bunch of accents, and sometimes those accents would get him into trouble. He was doing other voices on Rocky and Bullwinkle, and he did a lot of the voices of the famous people that Peabody and Sherman would go back to back in time to meet, including Confucius.
Of course, yes.
And the networks were like, hey, maybe let's not.
Did Paul Frees ever get pushback for doing a Russian accent or impersonation for the Boris character?
Not that I was able to find out. There's a lovely biography of him called Welcome, Foolish Mortals.
Good title.
By a guy named Ben Omart. It was published by Bear Manor Media. Ben Omart is the guy who runs Bear Manor Media.
Oh.
And if that name sounds familiar, you might remember it because they were one of the sponsors of season 13. And so they had little ads in the middle of the show.
Oh.
They put out a bunch of books about this kind of thing. If you want a biography of someone like Paul Frees, Bear Manor Media is there for you.
Wow.
So I read that this morning. Pretty fun.
Nice.
And I didn't see anything about him getting into that kind of trouble with it, but there were definitely some flags being raised about some of his voices, for sure. Another great notable thing that he did, have you ever seen the film Some Like It Hot?
Yeah, that's with Tony Curtis and Marilyn Monroe and Jack Lemmon.
Yeah. So he's in it in a very brief appearance as the funeral parlor director guy.
Oh, I don't even remember that.
That's okay.
It's been way too long, so...
It may have been. It's a really great movie. And he's in it in a much more memorable role as the voice of Tony Curtis because Tony Curtis couldn't do falsetto.
Oh my gosh.
So all of that had to be redubbed by Paul Frees.
Wow. All of it?
All of his I am speaking like a woman lines because Tony Curtis couldn't do an entire line in that voice, apparently.
Oh my gosh.
You also might remember Paul Frees from his ads. We mentioned that he was Toucan Sam between Mel Blanc and Maurice LaMarche.
Yes.
He also was the original voice of Poppin' Fresh,
Oh.
the Pillsbury Doughboy.
Oh my gosh. I had no idea. I had no idea more than one person is the Poppin' Fresh Doughboy for Pillsbury because he says the same line every single time. Why would you have a new person dub it?
I don't know. Like I said, his list of credits is just enormous. He had a very brief role as a band leader in the movie $1 Million Mermaid, which we discussed not too long ago.
Oh my gosh.
He's in like everything. It's ludicrous. He was not on Bonanza.
What? Murder, She Wrote?
No, he died before Murder, She Wrote was a thing.
Oh gosh.
He wasn't on Bonanza, but he was besties with an up-and-coming Lauren Green.
Oh, well, I forgive him then. Obviously, Lauren couldn't put his bestie on the show because that would be nepotism. And Hollywood doesn't do that, right? So certainly not television. That's ridiculous.
Well, Paul Frees spent a bit of the 50s in front of cameras after spending most of the 40s in radio. But he eventually realized that doing voice work is just a lot easier. You don't have to stand under hot lights and wait for everything to be set up. You just go into the booth, record for a few minutes, go home with your $1,000. Like, it's much better.
Yeah, no, it sounds awesome. Sounds way easier. No wonder why all of Hollywood is now doing voice acting instead of acting.
Exactly. And so he ended the 50s with a lot of money which he decided to spend on making a film, which was called The Beatniks.
Well, I hope he didn't spend all of his money on this film because I don't think he got very much out of it.
No, and he didn't know what he was doing.
Despite all of the work he had done for like decades, both in front of the camera and doing voice work, he just didn't really have a handle on the big picture whole process.
Yeah, apparently he didn't do much as a director. Joyce Terry, who plays Helen in The Beatniks and who was his wife at the time, says that he just sat around doing nothing. Also, Eddie Brandt, who co-wrote the music with him, was like, we didn't know what we were talking about. Paul didn't know how to direct. The two of them didn't know anything about the rock music they were trying to imitate. They were too old for that. And Paul Frees didn't even like rock music. He also didn't really like the music of the Beatles, despite doing the voice for John and George on the Beatles cartoon.
That is hilarious. But it's also the case that like things like the Beatles and rock music, not what I associate with Beatniks. I would have associated it more with jazz. And it's surprising to me that jazz wasn't more in the Paul Frees line.
Yeah, you'd think.
Well, so be it.
So here's another fun side to Paul Frees. So over the course of the 50s and then into the 60s, he started getting a little disillusioned with Hollywood and the schmoozing. And he started living most of his life in the Bay Area in a town called Tiburon, where he started doing an interesting side hustle.
Is he manning the boat to take everybody to Angel Island?
I mean, it's almost as exciting. He started working as an undercover narcotics agent.
Whoa! Wow, what year would this have been?
This would have been a few years in the late 60s.
Okay.
He was an agent for the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, which was basically the DEA before the DEA existed.
Oh my gosh. But Tiburon is in the North Bay. It's in Marin County. And the squares live in Marin County. Like all the cool people live on Haight Street, right? And they have their, hippie 60s lifestyle going on. How was he going to follow the narcotics world of San Francisco from Tiburon?
Apparently there was some stuff happening in and about Tiburon, or maybe he also went to some other areas. I'm not 100% sure. Details are a little bit sketchy, but there's been enough corroborating evidence that this is in fact the case. So it's unclear why he did this, I guess. He seemed to think it was fun. He was kind of into guns a little bit. He has a hobby. He seems to have been pretty safe about it. His kids say they never knew where the guns in the house were, so that's good.
Fair.
He was also a volunteer on these. He wasn't being paid to do it.
Whoa, you could be a volunteer narcotics agent?
Apparently so.
Whoa!
And the vibe I was getting was that he was mostly allowed to go on these missions because he made narking fun. He was a really fun guy. He was really entertaining. He could do voices, I guess.
Paul, you make narking fun again.
But yeah, he would entertain the cops on stakeouts. And he would also help with makeup and disguises and stuff like that.
Oh my gosh.
There's a story that I saw that is less substantiated where he had a badge for the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. Mm-hmm. And Elvis saw his badge and wanted one of his own, so he hooked him up with them, which that doesn't make any sense at all. I don't know how that could be true, but maybe Elvis was weird. Paul Frees, also kind of weird
also
sometimes.
Kind of weird, and maybe they vibed on a really weird level. In Tiburon, why not?
Why not? Anyway, Paul Frees was a fantastic worker. It seems like he was at least for a lot of people, a very generous coworker and so forth. Absolutely terrible as a husband and not there as a father.
Ooh, not that that's an unusual story for Hollywood.
No.
Did he ever direct anything after the Beatniks?
Absolutely not.
He learned his lesson, is that what you're saying? Did he write any scripts?
No, he had written for a few TV shows beforehand, but this was the last writing credit he has, at least on IMDb.
It sounds like he has a really amazing career, and he tried a whole lot of things, some of which worked, some of which didn't. It's a shame his personal life wasn't as successful as his voice acting, and that his coworkers thought better of him than, I guess, his family did, or it sounds like from what you're saying. But, what a career.
Yeah, absolutely. What a voice.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, everybody, it's time for the Shallow 13.
It's time for the Shallow 13. 13 dreamy ballads about today's experiment, the Beatniks. Go, Charlotte, go.
Not many familiar faces this time around. In fact, Eddie Brandt, who collaborated with Paul Frees on the songs in the Beatniks, he once pointed out that the only person in the cast to make it in the movies was Peter Breck, aka Mooney. Breck's career lasted into the early 2000s, but it mostly consisted of bit parts, including an episode of Bonanza, and in the early 80s, a few episodes of General Hospital.
In the opening of the episode, after Joel gets tired of defeating the poor bots in rock, paper, scissors, he says,
"You guys want to play Mumbly Peg now?"
Mumbly Peg can refer to a few different games, but one common version involves throwing a pocket knife into the ground in a series of increasingly elaborate and not entirely safe ways. This was the sort of games that kids used to play back when kids routinely carried around pocket knives. Screen time doesn't sound so scary now, does it?
Dr. Forrester is unimpressed with Joel's pocket pool.
What do you think, sirs?
I think you need to work on your English, Willie Moscone.
I'm told that Willie Moscone is one of the all-time greatest pool and billiards players. In fact, his success in the 1940s and 50s helped popularize the sport in the U.S. He's also the guy who taught Paul Newman how to play pool for the film The Hustler, and he has a cameo in the film.
During one of the Beatniks' opening driving sequences, Tom starts singing.
It's diamonds on my windshield and they're tears from heaven. I'm pulling into town on the interstate. I got a steel train in the rain.
Diamonds on My Windshield is a half-sung song by Tom Waits from his album The Heart of Saturday Night. With its stream-of-consciousness lyrics and an aggressive walking bass line, this song is 1,000,000 times more beat than anything in this movie.
Harry Bayless hangs up the phone at the diner, and Tom says,
Well, thank you very much.
Oh, we gotta call Toots Shore.
Toots Shore ran the New York City restaurant Toots Shore's Restaurant. Great name, no notes, during the 40s and 50s. It was up there with the 21 Club and the Stork Club as a celebrity hangout spot. The only catch? The baseball players, actors, and politicians who were treated like royalty were discouraged from bringing their wives. I feel like that detail sums up everything about the sort of ambiance Toots Shore was going for.
Eddie's first song in the diner has this for a chorus.
Sideburns don't need your sympathy.
Weird line, right? Well, turns out that Sideburns and Sympathy was the original name for this movie. See, there was a popular movie a few years earlier called Tea and Sympathy, which is a sort of coming-of-age story about a boy who gets a lot of ridicule for not being manly enough, which is, totally relevant to this movie because, well, look, it makes as much sense as the Beatniks.
30 Helens agree. This exchange is fun.
Helen?
Hayes, Gurley Brown, Keller, Wheels.
Okay, let's play Familiar Helens. Helen Hayes managed to win an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony, the full EGOT. One of her Oscars was a Best Supporting Actress Oscar for Airport. And wow, that feels like one of those wins you get not for that particular performance, but to celebrate your long and under-rewarded career. But she'd already won a Best Actress Oscar nearly 40 years earlier in 1931.
Helen Gurley Brown was, most notably, the editor of Cosmopolitan from 1965 to 1997. And even after that, she kept editing the international editions until her death in 2012. She was most famous as an advocate for sexual liberation for women. And in fact, even before she started at Cosmo, her first book, 1962's Sex and the Single Girl, was a book full of advice for unmarried women who want to have sex.
Helen Keller is, you know Helen Keller, right? She was an author, disability activist, prominent American socialist, and co-founder of the ACLU. She lost both her hearing and her sight due to illness when she was 19 months old. But through the help of her teacher, Anne Sullivan, herself partially blind, she learned to read and write, and did so quite well, publishing 12 books, including her 1903 autobiography, The Story of My Life.
Helen Wheels, meanwhile, was, well, it's a song by Paul McCartney and Wings about a car that's hell on wheels, but it's also a name adopted by a 70s punk rocker who had her own band, Helen Wheels Band, and also wrote several Blue Oyster Cult songs, including the B-side of Don't Fear the Reaper. And then when she got older, she became a bodybuilder, and so, yeah, she sounds pretty cool, huh? Link in the show notes.
As a car pulls up to the bar, Crow quips,
I think we're here, Michael.
This is, of course, a reference to Kit, the sassy talking car from Knight Rider. But you might remember a special episode of Knight Rider where there was also an evil Kit named Carr, K-A-R-R. Don't ask. But do ask who provided Carr with a voice, because it was none other than Paul Frees.
Two guys in suits talk to Eddie, and Tom riffs.
Ladies and gentlemen, Williams and Reed.
Stay it, Mr.
Williams and Ree are a comedy double act that have been performing since the 1960s, and their comedy, well, it's old school comedy, by which I mean it involves a lot of stereotypes. They even refer to themselves using stereotyped language as, quote, the Indian and the white guy, Terry Ree is Lakota. We've talked about them a little bit before, but running out of time. Charlotte, can you read this?
Oh, sure. Chris just finished reading Cliff Nesteroff's book, We Had a Little Real Estate Problem. It's a history of Native American comedy, and it provides some interesting context for where Williams and Ree are coming from. And it highlights a wide variety of other indigenous comedians. Sounds like you recommend the book?
That's right. Oh, and also, that's time.
So this movie wasn't originally called The Beatniks, Chris, because it's not like there's a title that immediately springs to mind when you're watching this movie other than The Beatniks, even though The Beatniks has maybe The Boatniks, like that did spring to mind.
That's a different movie entirely.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's a Disney movie from 1970, I think.
Stop it. There's a Boatniks movie?
They make reference to it many times.
Well, but I didn't know it was a real thing. I thought they were just making fun of the font.
What's the font?
The Beatnik font that's on there. The E is all way too big and it kind of looks like an O.
Oh, sure. That font.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. It's The Beatniks is a film from 1970 that's got a bunch of people like Phil Silvers and Don Amici in it. It's made by Disney. It's about a Coast Guard guy and romantic problems. And if you look at the poster for it with the tagline, "Man the Laugh Boats," LAFF boats. It looks very much like it wants to be Catalina Caper.
Oh, but Disney's already made Catalina Caper, and it was not with Don Amici.
I mean, do you wish that this movie was actually about Beatniks?
I don't know what I wish about this movie. I wish something about this movie because it is not what I want it to be in any capacity. But nobody's dressed like a beatnik. I don't see anybody dressed up like Audrey Hepburn and Funny Face in all black with little white socks on, clapping and dancing super weird inside of a smoky bar underground in Paris. I don't see that happening anywhere. There's no bongo drums. People aren't smoking clove cigarettes. What the heck? I don't see any beatnicking happening here.
Well, I will tell you this. There was a press kit that they sent out along with this movie, and the press kit is far more beatniky than the movie.
Oh, what did it have?
It had a bunch of illustrations of beatniks.
Okay.
Clearly recognizable cartoon beatniks saying, "Cool it, Pops, we've made the scene," and things like that.
Did it have the little soul patch like Frank does with his troll outfit, but a troll soul patch?
Well, this one cartoon that I'm looking at right now, he's got a full beard, but he's wearing a little flat cap and he's got a little,
awesome.
Long cigarette in his mouth and so forth. But Here's the key thing. It also came with a beatnik glossary.
Stop. What words in the glossary were ever mentioned in the movie?
Well, let's see if you can figure out what these words mean.
Oh no. Are you testing my beatnik vocabulary? I couldn't even get through On the Road, and you know this because you can't get through On the Road, and you tried to read my version of On the Road, my printed copy.
I know. I loved that because your comments in the Martian were so frustrated.
Oh, because it was a terrible
so delightful
book.
And funny. It was. I don't know. It was a long time ago. I haven't tried to read it again since. I'm not compelled to, but
it's not our bag. Listeners, if it's your bag, good for you.
Exactly.
Wow.
All right. We'll start easy.
Okay.
Kooky.
That seems like it's wacky, weird.
Yeah, what's a kooky?
Oh, a kooky? I don't know, like a weird person?
Yeah, a far out person or a wild character.
Well, but you say far out, like a person who's far out is cool, but I wouldn't think somebody who's kooky is totally cool, you know what I mean?
No, I'm afraid you've already fallen. Far out means weird, exciting, or pretty.
I'm sorry, pretty, weird, exciting, or pretty.
You could say a woman looks far out, I guess. I
guess, man.
I don't know.
That seems far out.
What about Vitamin Village?
That sounds like a place where you get your drugs.
Yeah, you'd think so, but it's actually a grocery store.
What? All right.
Fruits and veg have lots of vitamins in them.
No, that's very true. And it's not like you can go to a store to get your drugs. Now you can, but not then.
Absolutely. What about a plucked chicken?
Oh, a plucked chicken. Man, I am so bad at this, Chris. I can't believe that we have these quizzes for me. Bring Adam back. He's so much better at this than I am.
Well, let's work through this. What's a chicken?
It's got a woman.
Okay, but more specifically, What makes a chick into a chicken?
The breasts? I don't know.
No, very much no.
The eggs?
No. The
feet?
chicken.
Is it the feet?
No, it's the ring. The chicken is engaged and the plucked chicken is married.
I'm sorry, you're telling what makes a chicken is the ring?
Yeah, it's got an engagement ring.
Okay, well, I'm really bad at this game. I can tell that I'm a terrible beatnik already. I would have been a Gidget on the beach, not knowing what the heck was going on, but still wanting to get together with Moondoggy.
All right, I got 3 more for you. We'll do them real quick.
All right. Mm-hmm.
Moo goo.
That sounds like cheese.
Close. Butter. It's
Butter. It had to be something related to milk.
Exactly. Moo juice is milk, therefore moo goo is butter.
Yeah, sure.
What about squatchel?
What?
SQUATCHEL. Squatchel.
It's your hideout where you squat, right?
That would make sense. It's apparently lovemaking.
That sounds like a terrible word for lovemaking. But okay, whatever, you beatniks.
And there's a bunch of them on here, but the one we're going to end with, I think, is dildo.
Well, I know what I think dildo is, but I doubt it's what you say it is, Mr. Beatnik Man.
I will say this one ends with an E.
It's a small bird.
It isn't, well, probably in their language it would be. It is a, quote, dippy dame.
Sure, a bird. Wow. I guess I'll never be a beatnik, Chris. That's pretty much where that's going for me. How would you have fared if I had done this for you?
I might have done a little bit better. I tend to be a little better at figuring these out, but I don't want to be a beatnik, so I'm fine with not doing well at this.
What? You don't want to wear funky glasses and have a soul patch and talk about how awful the establishment is?
And I do that anyways. There are other countercultural positions to have.
Fair enough.
Well, we need to say something about the short.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. General Hospital. Well, we've already talked about medical conditions, so we can't talk about that.
We've already talked about soap operas.
That's true. And that means that we got to talk about horse operas too, which was pretty phenomenal. So, and this segment didn't take place at the hospital. Like, other than the fact that they called themselves Doctor every once in a while, you would never have known it was an episode of General Hospital. I mean, the Riffers talked about booze, so we can't talk about booze. I think that pretty much just leaves the cake.
Yeah, well, it was a striking cake. It said congratulations on it.
In cursive, so no one can read it anymore.
Yeah, they'd held on to that cake for 50, 60 years.
Well, you might as well have. It didn't look very appetizing to eat.
Well, that's the other thing. It was the most plain cake. It had the flattest icing imaginable, and it was patchy.
Yeah, it wasn't covering all the sides. I totally understand, like, this is the props. Don't eat the cake. Like, it was a good riff, everybody. You totally nailed that one.
Also, frankly, it was a massive cake for 4 people.
Well, I mean, it was supposed to be a party. The party looks bigger if the cake is bigger.
Oh, I see.
That's why when you go to Safeway or your local grocery store and you buy a sheet cake, it's freaking ginormous. Nobody's going to eat all that cake.
Okay, I have to admit, while I'm sure I've been served sheet cake from a grocery store, I have never purchased a cake from a grocery store. I know it's a thing you can do.
Never
I've purchased
once?
cupcakes and so forth, but I've never purchased a sheet cake from a grocery store.
So there's a calculus teacher inside of my school, and she purchases a sheet cake at the end of every year. And
I thought you were going to say every week. Every Friday. She's like, I need my sheet cake. It's been a long week.
She's fabulous because every Monday is dessert Monday, and she bakes something new and brings it for the department every Monday during lunch. She's amazing for a lot of reasons, but most amazing is the tradition that she's kept on from the person who taught calculus before her. And that is at the end of the year, after the test has all happened, after they've taken their final, her calculus class gets together and they have a party, and she buys a sheet cake
with the word congratulations calculations written in cursive all along the diagonal.
Practically, she gives an equation, a complicated calculus equation for her class to solve, and they have to solve it correctly as a class before she lets them eat the cake. And that's their celebration. They solve a calculus equation together as a class, and then they celebrate the closing of the school year by eating sheet cake. But she says that more than once, the store that she has gotten the cake for has incorrectly transcribed the calculus equation that has to be solved, because typically the person who is writing on the cake isn't somebody who has taken calculus. And so they don't quite get everything right. So she's had to, change things around a little bit to make it work. It's a little rough,
Oh, that's amazing. Hey, Charlotte, I had very little to say about this movie, I feel like.
I don't have anything more to add about the movie, but I was reminded of something by the Mads invention.
The troll dolls, yes.
Yes! Did you ever have a troll doll? Did your brother?
I probably did have a troll doll, and my younger brother probably did as well. I remember them getting really popular at some time in the late 80s or early 90s, like right around then.
Sure, for a very short period of time, right? Like, it was really, really weird. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I ever had a troll doll. I'm pretty sure my sister had troll dolls.
Well, one of the things that I found really surprising about them is that I assumed, because they just suddenly appeared one day for me in the late 80s, that they were like from then.
But they're not.
They're super not. They're like, they were a big fad in the 60s as well. They're from the 50s.
I mean, really, they just kind of revamp themselves every 20 years or so and just come out again.
Like the phoenix rising from the ashes, troll dolls become,
Though I would not recommend burning a troll doll, as they are mostly plastic. They have risen again, as you know, 20 years after our 80s and early 90s fad. Although maybe a little later than that is when the movie came out, because my kid was old enough to see the Trolls movie.
Yes, 2016.
2016. So a little more than 20 years. They're getting a little longer in their cycles, but I think we've stayed in this Trolls cycle for much longer. My kid loved the Trolls movie.
Ooh.
Really liked the music from the Trolls movie.
Okay.
Although now I think the only thing he listens to from the Trolls movie is the Gorillaz cover. Like, now he's really into Gorillaz, not so much into the, Brady Bunch montage music. But anyway, I was talking with a friend of mine when my kid was younger, maybe when he was like 7 or 8, something like that, when the movie was coming out. And I was recommending it to a friend of mine who I know is really particular about what she shows her kids in terms of movies. Like, she's really particular. They don't get to see things that don't pass, certain tests. And she always goes to the websites that are written by moms for moms to tell you about what's happening in the movies that you're going to need to have a conversation about with your children.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that she told me about, I didn't even notice in the movie until she told me about it. This is how bad of a parent I am. She was like, I can't let my children see this movie because there's a naked troll that farts glitter.
Oh, yeah, I think I've seen that clip. Sure.
Yep. His name is Guy Diamond, and he farts glitter. That is how he produces glitter for all of the glitter things that happen in Troll Land. He farts glitter out of his bottom. And I watched that. I can't tell you how many times I watched the movie, Chris. I think I watched that movie like 10 times in a week, every week for like a month.
Oh, no.
And I never once was like, oh, he's farting glitter. I don't know how I missed it. How did I miss that? But she was like, my children will never see this movie because they cannot see a naked troll farting glitter. I just don't know how to have a conversation with them about that.
I mean, there's not much of a conversation you need to have.
I mean, what do you have to do to fart glitter?
Be a troll.
First off, number one. Mm-hmm.
So that's
Not something any of our children can do. Yeah.
End of conversation. You're not a troll. You're not going to be farting glitter. Don't even try.
True. Wow.
It'll kill you.
Yeah, I know. And it makes him so happy to fart glitter. And it makes all of his friends happy.
Well, if we could all fart glitter, we would, and we'd have all sorts of glitter polluting the oceans and so forth. But, we would just never stop.
I think the glitter that you fart is totally going to be biodegradable, Chris. Come on.
Well, we'll see.
I mean, we're not farting plastic these days. If I was a troll, though, maybe I would. Trolls are made out of plastic.
There you go.
That's
there you
true.
go.
So, the Trolls movie, not recommended by moms, according to this website, because there's a naked troll that farts glitter. You've been warned. If you've been affected by the issues on this show, if you too are not a beatnik, or if you'd like to ask us anything, get in touch with us. Our email is info@itsjustashow.com, and we would love to hear from you. This show is made possible by listeners like you and our randomly selected supporter, James. Thank you, James. For as little as $1 an episode, you can be like James and help us research and record this show. You can join us in a friendly Discord, and you can listen to all our super fan bonus bits. Find out more at itsjustashow.com/Patreon or patreon.com/itsjustashow. And if you want to follow up on anything that was mentioned today, you'll find links in our show notes at itsjustashow.com/episode/147. Well, Chris, we've certainly talked enough about Beatniks. It's time for us to move on to other topics. What are we going to be watching next time?
Next time, we are going to be heading forward to Season 10, Episode 8, Final Justice.
Ooh, so sci-fi era, final season.
Yep. And the third thing that you're looking for in this list of qualities that this episode has is Joe Don Baker.
Ah! So this is our way to watch Mitchell without watching Mitchell. Is that what you're saying? It's a show with Joe Don Baker that I don't have to cry when I watch it because I know that it's the end of an era temporarily.
Well, we will see if you end up crying due to Final Justice. But until then,
it throbs a little, like my heart when I look into the pitiless void of Howl, man, Howl!
And here's to the most depressing party I've ever been to. Take it away, Theme Squad. Away in my beautiful balloon.